My daughter said I didn't need to sit up front, said the seats were for people who shaped her. So I sat in the back, where the bills I paid belonged. And when she tossed her cap, I tossed her college fund records in the trash. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you how everything unfolded. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Richard Wright from Alaska. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I wore the damn tie. That same burgundy one I kept in the back of my closet for weddings and funerals, though this felt like both. It clashed with my shirt, but I figured it would pass. I ironed my pants, shined my boots, even combed my hair down like Renee used to ask me to when she was a little girl, back when I was still her hero and not just her bank account. The university auditorium looked like something out of a catalog: arches, marble, banners flapping softly in the breeze. I'd never set foot on that campus before. Every open house, every family weekend, I got a polite excuse. Dad, it's just a lot of boring lectures. Or, it's mostly for moms. That one stung more than she probably realized. But I let it slide, like I always did. I figured graduation would be our moment. The culmination. Proof that all those greasy-fingered nights under cars and unpaid dental bills had been worth it. I got there early, carrying a small bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite, at least when she was 14. I didn't know if she still liked them, but I didn't know what music she listened to anymore either, so I went with what I remembered. I walked up to the volunteer table and gave my name. The young man smiled, scanned his list, and pointed toward the back half of the auditorium. General seating's that way. I blinked. Sorry, I thought family got assigned seats? He nodded. Yeah, immediate family of honorees are up front, but most of those are already filled. Unless your name's on her guest list, you'll have to sit back. I hesitated, confusion prickling in my gut. She said I was invited. I'm her father. He looked sympathetic but shrugged. You can check again at the info tent, but if it's not listed, that's when I saw her. Renee, in her cap and gown, standing near the stage with a group of professors and what looked like her thesis advisor. She looked radiant, confident, unrecognizable in the way only time and distance can make someone. I called her name once, twice. She turned, waved, and smiled, but didn't come over. I walked closer. She met me halfway, still beaming. Dad, you made it. Of course I made it. I handed her the flowers. Sunflowers. She took them awkwardly, looked around like she was hoping someone was watching. Thanks. That's sweet. There was a pause. I gestured behind me. They said I wasn't on the list for the reserved section. Her smile thinned, just a flicker. Oh yeah? I wasn't sure who to put. The seats are mostly for people who, shaped me here. Mentors, faculty, my project sponsor. It was limited seating. It took a second for the words to land. Shaped her. Here. I felt something in my chest loosen, not in relief, but like a bolt coming undone. Right, I said quietly. Makes sense. I'll see you after, okay? She said, already turning away. There's a reception. I nodded. She was gone before I could say anything else. I walked back to general seating, past the families with balloons and matching t-shirts, past the photo backdrops and the proud parents clutching camcorders. I found a seat in the very back, second row from the wall. I didn't bother unfolding the program. I didn't clap when they called her name. I watched as she walked across the stage, shook hands, threw her cap into the air with a group of people I'd never met. The applause roared around me, but I sat still. Afterward, I waited outside for a while. I saw her hugging a woman in a sleek gray suit, probably the mentor. They laughed like old friends. I wasn't part of the photo group. She didn't introduce me to anyone. When she finally walked past, all she said was, "I'll see you at home, Dad. Gotta get to the reception." And just like that, she was gone again. I walked to the parking lot, got in my truck, and pulled the envelope out of the glove compartment. It was thick with every tuition payment receipt, dorm check, textbook transfer. 17 years worth of sacrifice, categorized and paperclipped like I always did with my ledgers. I looked through them one last time, then quietly walked to the nearest trash bin, dropped the whole envelope in, Didn't even flinch. Then I went home. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay on top of the covers with the TV on mute, staring at the ceiling, the soft flicker of some infomercial bouncing shadows off the walls. My hands itched, not with pain but memory. Those familiar calluses, the grooves in my palms that never seemed to soften no matter how hard I scrubbed. The smell of motor oil and rubber had long since embedded itself into my skin, like a second identity. Renee used to call it my garage cologne. When she was 6, she said she liked it because it meant I was home. I hadn't thought about that in years. The next morning, I wandered into the garage before sunrise. It was my place of peace, the one spot no one judged me for not having a college degree or quoting Shakespeare. Just torque wrenches, socket sets, and the steady hum of a job done right. I opened the file cabinet in the corner, the one with a busted drawer I kept meaning to fix, and pulled out a photo album I hadn't looked through in probably a decade. The first picture stopped me cold. Me holding Renee in the hospital, still in my work coveralls, grime on my fingertips, and eyes half closed with exhaustion. Her little hand was wrapped around one of my dirty fingers. I remembered I'd driven straight from a break job when my ex called to say she was going into labor. I didn't even get time to change. Renee came into the world before I'd had a chance to wash my hands. Maybe that should have been my warning. I flipped through pages, her first tricycle, the Halloween where I dressed up as a scarecrow just so she'd laugh, the day she got accepted into that fancy prep school. I remembered how I'd worked weekends for months to cover the extra tuition. When I told her she got in, she screamed and jumped into my arms. Back then, my sacrifices were currency she still respected. Somewhere along the line, the exchange rate shifted. I thought back to the piano lessons she begged for in 8th grade. We couldn't afford it. Not really. But I sold my fishing gear to pay for the first 3 months. I sat through every recital, even when she hit more wrong notes than right. And when she joined that robotics club in high school, I signed up for extra shifts to afford the travel fees. I never once said no. I just figured that's what dads did: provide, push, believe. She started pulling away around junior year. I chalked it up to teenage moods. But the signs were there. How she hesitated before introducing me to her friends. How she asked if I could maybe not pick her up in the work truck. How she corrected people when they assumed I had a business degree. No, my dad owns a garage, she'd say, like it was some sad consolation prize. But I ignored it. Every time. I told myself it was a phase, that college would mature her. That one day, she'd look back and see the man behind the grease stains and overdue tax payments. I was wrong. I sat down at my workbench, elbows on the scarred wood, and stared at the blank cement floor. I wasn't even angry. Not really. I was just tired. So damn tired. It's funny how a single moment, a single sentence, can unspool years of effort. The seats are for people who shaped me. Like I'd been absent this whole time. Like paying for every credit hour, every dorm meal, every mid-semester flight home was just some abstract, automatic thing the universe provided. I looked down at my hands. The fingers were stiffer these days. Arthritis creeping in. I'd been thinking about downsizing, maybe selling the shop in a few years. I imagined spending more time fishing, maybe taking a road trip out west like I'd always dreamed of. But every time I tried to plan for me, I ended up funneling the money back into her. Into Renee. Because she was the future. At least, that's what I told myself. That morning, I started doing the math. I wasn't tallying tuition or rent or the new car battery I'd bought for her last winter. I was tallying years. Decades. The number of birthdays I skipped seeing friends because she wanted help with a school project. The times I ignored my own doctor appointments because she needed braces. The way I never dated seriously again because I didn't want anyone else getting in between us. And now? Now I wasn't even worth a reserved seat. The ache wasn't in my wallet. It was in my bones. I had invested my life into building someone else's future, and all I had left was a folding chair in the back row and a daughter who smiled for photos with strangers. I looked around the garage, the old posters, the oil-stained floor, the dented toolbox I'd had since I was 20. This was where I shaped things. Bent metal, tightened bolts, brought dead machines back to life. But I couldn't shape her. Not anymore. By the end of the day, I had pulled every file I had with her name on it. Lease documents, insurance records, that fat folder marked Renee, College. I laid them all out on the workbench, stared at them like an inventory. They weren't just papers. They were proof. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I had given, and she had taken. That was the moment I decided. No more. Not because I didn't love her, but because I finally realized she didn't respect me. And love without respect? That's a slow kind of erosion. It wears you down until even your shadow feels like a burden. I stayed in the garage until dusk, sorting papers into two piles, what needed shredding and what needed burning. The rest went into a box for my lawyer. I was done being invisible. She came home 3 days after the graduation, still glowing from whatever champagne and accolades had carried her through the weekend. I heard her heels click against the hardwood floor, the front door slamming behind her like it always did, careless and familiar. I was at the kitchen table when she walked in, flipping through the local paper out of habit more than interest. I watched her drop her purse by the stairs and kick off her shoes without a second glance in my direction. She didn't notice the folder on the table. Not yet. "Hey, Dad," she called casually, stretching like someone who'd just returned from a vacation, not a 4-year journey funded by someone else's calloused hands. "I need to pick up my dry cleaning later. Can I borrow the truck?" I looked up slowly. "You mean the truck you said was embarrassing to be seen in last year?" She blinked, taken aback. "I didn't say that. You said it smelled like an ashtray and desperation." I wrote it down. Renee sighed, already annoyed. "Come on, Dad. Don't start. I've been traveling all weekend, and I'm exhausted." I didn't say anything right away. I pushed the folder slightly toward her with one finger and waited. She glanced at it, then back at me, confused. "What's that?" "Your final bill." She frowned, still not getting it. "What?" I tapped the folder. "Every tuition payment. Every rent transfer. Textbooks, utilities, the time I overnight your passport to Spain. All of it." She opened it with a dramatic scoff, like I'd just handed her an overdue library notice. Her eyes scanned the pages. At first, she looked amused, then confused, then something else, tight-lipped, defensive. "What is this supposed to be? You keeping score now?" I leaned back in my chair. "No, I'm just showing you what invisible looks like in dollars. That's not fair. Neither is telling your father he didn't shape your journey." She slammed the folder shut. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" I asked, voice low, steady. "Because I was there for every scraped knee, every broken heart, every phone call at midnight. But when the time came to give credit, I was suddenly furniture in the background. I didn't know I had to give a speech to prove I care." "You didn't have to say anything, Renee. You just had to remember where the hell you came from." There it was, her face tightening like I'd slapped her. But I didn't feel cruel. I felt clear. She looked down at the folder, then at me. "Are you seriously mad because I didn't put you in some stupid speech?" I shook my head slowly. "I'm mad because for years I convinced myself that giving you everything was the same as being appreciated. I'm mad because I made you think you didn't have to choose your words carefully when it came to me. And I'm mad because now I see you didn't forget me by accident. You just stopped seeing me at all." She stood there, frozen, as if the conversation was turning into something she couldn't steer. She crossed her arms. "What are you trying to say?" I stood up, walked past her, picked up the envelope I'd prepared the night before and placed it in her hand. "You have 30 days. She opened it and read the notice, her mouth parting just slightly. "You're evicting me? You're a college graduate now. Time to act like one." "You're serious?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She tossed the envelope onto the floor and stormed upstairs. A door slammed. Then silence. I stood in the hallway for a while, staring at the crumpled envelope. Not because I wanted to take it back, but because I needed to feel the weight of it. I had delivered that message as a father who had finally found his limit. A man who had given until his worth had been measured in seating charts and silence. That night, I got a call from my sister. "David, what the hell are you doing?" she hissed. Renee just called me sobbing. "Good," I said. Means she still knows how to feel something. She just graduated. She's figuring stuff out. You can't throw her out over her feelings. It's not about feelings. It's about respect. She's your daughter. She was my daughter when she still remembered who raised her. Click. One by one, the calls came. A cousin. A neighbor. Even Renee's mother, who hadn't paid a single bill since she walked out a decade ago. "She's still just a kid," she said. You're blowing this out of proportion. She's 22, I replied. And the proportion was blown when she erased me from her story. I didn't go to bed angry that night. I went to bed clean. For the first time in years, I felt like I'd stopped lying to myself. I hadn't ruined our relationship. I just stopped pretending it was something it wasn't. She didn't speak to me for 2 days. Not even a text. Just the shuffle of her footsteps above me, the occasional thud of a slammed drawer or a dropped shoe. I heard her crying once, maybe twice. I didn't go upstairs. Not out of spite, but because I had finally accepted that comforting her after being disrespected wasn't fatherly, it was enabling. It was patching holes she kept tearing wider, then calling it love. On the third morning, she came down to the kitchen while I was nursing my coffee. She looked tired, her hair pulled back, face bare. The kind of look that used to make me ask, "You okay, kid?" But I didn't ask that day. She didn't deserve that softness anymore. Not without the truth first. She sat across from me, her eyes puffy. "You're really doing this?" I didn't answer right away. I just took another sip of coffee, letting the quiet stretch between us. "I already did. You're kicking me out. You're grown. I'm giving you the dignity of standing on your own 2 feet. Don't twist it into some moral lesson," she snapped. "You're mad and you want to hurt me." I let out a long breath. "You hurt me the second you decided I was just a background character in your success story. I'm simply responding accordingly." She stood up, pacing now, arms folded. "You know, for someone who always claimed to love unconditionally, you've got a hell of a lot of conditions." "I have boundaries," I corrected, voice sharp but steady. "Something I should have taught you years ago." She stopped pacing. Her lip trembled. "I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did." Her eyes darted toward the back door, then to the floor. "So what, this is it? I'm on my own now." "You always were," I said. "You just never had to feel it." She flinched, and for a second I saw my daughter again. Not the polished, patronizing young woman who'd smiled for strangers at graduation, but the little girl with scraped knees and sleep-tousled hair who once ran into my arms after a nightmare. I hated how much I missed that version of her. I hated how long I'd waited for her to come back. I pushed my chair back and stood. "You've got 27 days left. And if I don't leave?" "My lawyer's already filed the paperwork." "You're seriously going to evict your own daughter?" "I already have," I said. She stormed out of the kitchen, grabbed her keys off the counter, and left. I watched her car reverse down the driveway, tires squealing slightly as she turned too fast. I didn't follow her. I didn't text her to be careful. I just stood at the window and listened to the stillness settle back into the house. Later that day, the phone started ringing again. My brother. My cousin's wife. Even Mrs. Daly next door, who gently suggested I was being a bit extreme. I listened to all of them, nodded politely, and said the same thing. She made her choices. Now I'm making mine. That evening, her mother showed up unannounced. I hadn't seen Rachel in over a year. She looked the same, with sharp eyes, impatient mouth, the faint whiff of perfume that used to drive me crazy and now just made my skin itch. She didn't knock. She never did. "She told me what you did," she said by way of greeting. She left out what she did. "She's 22, David. And I was 22 when you left. What's your point?" She crossed her arms. "You're making her feel abandoned." "No," I said. "I'm finally matching the level of effort she's shown me. And it scares her." "Jesus," she muttered, looking away. "You always had a hard time letting go." I stepped closer. "No, Rachel. I had a hard time letting go of people I loved. That's different. But this is clarity." She stared at me for a long time, then walked out without another word. No threats. No guilt trips. Just silence. I took that as the closest thing to agreement I'd ever get from her. That night, I started packing a small bag. Nothing major, just the essentials. A fishing pole, some old maps, a few shirts. I've been thinking about a trip for years. I didn't know where I'd go yet. Maybe the coast. Maybe nowhere at all. But the idea of leaving, of driving past the noise, the guilt, the silence, I liked how it felt in my bones. As I zipped up the bag, I passed by Renee's bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. I peeked in, not out of nostalgia, but to gauge how much she'd started packing. Not much. A suitcase half full. A few things off the walls. She was still hoping I'd change my mind. She didn't know yet that this was me changing. The days rolled by with a strange rhythm, quiet mornings, a few hours at the garage, and evenings alone in a house that suddenly felt like it had too many rooms. Renee stayed out more often than not, coming home only to sleep, barely saying a word. I didn't ask where she went, didn't ask who she was with. I figured if she wanted to keep treating this place like a halfway house, I'd let her. Until the deadline ran out. Every time she walked through that door, I was reminded that letting her stay longer would only teach her that guilt still worked on me. And I was done teaching that lesson. One night, I found myself in the living room with a beer in one hand and an old photo album in the other. I'd taken it out of the closet a few nights earlier and left it sitting there, daring myself to open it. It was the thick, leather-bound one, black corners, yellowed pages. It had been Renee's favorite when she was little. We used to look through it together on Sunday mornings, her tiny fingers pointing to pictures and asking, was I really that small? I used to think those were the moments that bound us. Turns out, they were just memories I kept alive alone. I flipped to a page near the middle and stared at the photo of her 7th birthday. Her smile was gap-toothed, her eyes wide with joy. I remembered the cake I stayed up all night baking because she wanted strawberry, but the bakery had run out. I remembered hand-making decorations because money was tight that month. I remembered holding a disposable camera and thinking, one day, she'll remember this. But she hadn't. Or if she had, it hadn't mattered enough to carry into adulthood. That realization didn't crush me like it might have once. It sobered me, like an engine finally stalling after years of running on fumes. The next morning, I opened up her old closet and started cleaning. I wasn't spiteful about it. I just needed the space. Her trophies, the leftover notebooks, old posters from high school. I packed them neatly into a box. It wasn't an act of anger. It was a ritual, a way of saying, you don't live here anymore, not in the way you think. By the 3rd box, I found a stack of college acceptance letters. Some were unopened. Others had little notes she'd scribbled on the back. Too far, maybe, Dad can't afford. That last one stopped me. I sat down on the floor with it in my lap, reading her teenage handwriting like a stranger decoding a message. For a brief second, I felt the old tug of sympathy. She'd once been just a kid, afraid of asking too much. But then I remembered the auditorium, the way she said, people who shaped me, and the moment passed. I tucked the note back in the envelope and kept packing. That afternoon, I called my lawyer to confirm everything was in place. She drafted the eviction paperwork, filed it with the local court, and even arranged for a process server in case things got messy. She was thorough like that. I appreciated it. You sure about this? She asked me on the phone. As sure as I've ever been about anything. She paused. Just know, it's okay to grieve it. Even if it's the right choice. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The grief had already passed. What remained wasn't mourning, it was clarity. Sharp, quiet clarity. Later that evening, I sat out on the porch and watched the sun dip behind the neighbor's house. I listened to the familiar creak of the wooden boards beneath my chair, the hum of distant traffic, the rhythmic buzz of cicadas. It was a peaceful kind of loneliness, the kind that didn't beg for company, but simply acknowledged itself. And I realized I hadn't felt that kind of peace in years. I used to think giving made me a good man. That saying yes, even when it hurt, was a kind of virtue. But all it really did was teach people how to treat me like a resource instead of a person. I wasn't raising a daughter back then, I was subsidizing one. And in doing so, I taught her that my love came without conditions, without cost, without limits. That was on me. I stayed on the porch until the stars came out, thinking about the version of myself I might get to be now. Maybe I'd take that road trip. Maybe I'd finally visit Colorado like I always said I would. Maybe I'd fix the back deck or finally replace the water heater. Simple things. Personal things. Things that didn't require anyone's approval. That night, I slept straight through without waking. No dreams. No heaviness. Just the steady rhythm of a man who had nothing more to prove. And in the quiet space where guilt used to live, something else started to grow, permission. The deadline came and went like any other day. No dramatic exit. No packed car in the driveway. No goodbye note. Just silence. When I woke that morning and walked past Renee's door, it was wide open, the room stripped bare. No pictures. No perfume. Just the faint ghost of her presence. indentations in the carpet where her bed had been, a forgotten bobby pin on the windowsill, and a sense of finality that hit harder than any slammed door ever could. I stood there for a long while, staring at the emptiness. I didn't cry. I didn't sigh. I just nodded, like a man confirming the final bolt had been tightened, the job complete. She was gone. Not just from the room, but from the season of my life where everything I did was for her. And I was still standing. The lawyer confirmed it later that afternoon. She'd signed the papers, moved out, no contest. She listed a forwarding address somewhere across town, a rented apartment she was sharing with 2 friends. That was it. No apology. No attempt at reconciliation. Just paperwork and distance. I drove to the garage and locked up early that day. Didn't even bother cleaning the grease off my hands. Something about it felt honest, like keeping the badge of who I was, who I still was, even without her acknowledgement. I drove out to the university campus, parking in the lot behind the auditorium. It was empty now. Quiet. The banners had come down. The stage was gone. Just a few folding chairs left out by the loading dock, waiting to be carted away. I walked around to the front, past the steps where families had taken photos, past the plaque etched with the school's motto. And then I stood in the exact spot where I'd been told, indirectly but unmistakably, that my contribution was worth less than a reserved seat. The sun was starting to dip behind the administration building, casting long shadows across the pavement. I looked out at the rows of seats in my mind, the ones that had once been filled with proud parents, with real shapers, as Renee had put it. I imagined my chair in the back row, just where I'd been told I belonged. I whispered, not to anyone but myself, that was the last seat she gave me. Then I smiled, because I wasn't in that seat anymore. I wasn't waiting for her to notice me. I wasn't folding myself in half to be what she needed. I wasn't holding on to some crumpled picture of fatherhood that only worked when you ignored how much it hurt. I was just me, David Carter, mechanic, provider, human being. And for the first time in a long while, that felt like enough. I walked the campus path alone, hands in my pockets, my boots scuffing the concrete. I thought about calling her. Not to scold, not to beg. Just to say, I'm still here, if you ever want to see the whole story. But I didn't. Because some lessons have to be lived, not told. And maybe one day she'd look back and understand what I meant when I said I shaped her life with every sacrifice she didn't notice. Or maybe she wouldn't. Either way, I'd made peace with it. That night, I booked a cabin upstate for a week. Fishing gear in the truck, coffee packed, maps marked. It wasn't much, but it was mine. My trip. My time. No one to check in with. No one to sit behind. I pulled out of the driveway at sunrise, letting the radio hum low, the road stretching wide in front of me like it had just been paved. And in that moment, I wasn't a father left behind. I was a man who had learned, finally, when to stop giving and how to start living. If this story hit home for you, don't scroll just yet. Like the video if you've ever had to set a boundary that broke your heart, and leave a comment below. What would you have done in David's shoes? Don't forget to subscribe for more raw, real-life family drama stories told straight from the heart, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next story. Sometimes the most powerful thing a parent can say is, enough. See you soon in the next story.